And I'll close with 1 Kings 3. And I was reading this the other day, and it got me thinking about this. Solomon, when he was first given the throne from his father David, was young and didn't know what to do. And so God came to him in a dream and asked him what God could give him as he started rule of his kingdom. And Solomon says in verse 9, "Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thy so great a people?" And the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. And God said unto him, "Because thou hast asked this thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life, neither hast asked riches for thyself, nor has asked the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment. Behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee a wise and understanding heart. So there was none like thee before thee, nor after thee shall any arise like unto thee." So Solomon, who was a believer, who had trusted in the Lord, he was raised by his father David, who was a man after God's own heart. He showed him the ways of the Lord. He received the Lord through faith. He called upon the name of the Lord. And through this faith, and humbled his heart, he was given discernment. He was given understanding of God's judgments and how to rightly judge. And so right after this account, we see his first judgment take place. And it's the two women that came with the live child and dead child. And I think there's a lot to be learned from this in rightly dividing the word of truth from 2 Timothy. So let me read this and then we'll discuss it to close. So we'll skip down 1 Kings 3 verse 16. "Then came there two women that were harlots unto the king and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the third day, after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also. And we were together, there was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. And this woman's child died in the night, because she overlaid it. And she arose at midnight, took my son from beside me, while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I arose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son which I did bear. And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king. Then said the king, The one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other. Then spake the woman, whose the living child was, unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other said, Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it. Then the king answered and said, Give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment. So, a lot of analogies in this story, in this true account of Solomon's first judgment as ruler of Israel. The parallels I want you to see are King Solomon is a shadow or type of Christ, of Jesus Christ. And his sword that was to divide the child is the word of God. And what the sword was doing in the hand of the king was to discern the hearts and intents of the heart. And we see that one woman, her child died, but she tried to rob the living child. But her child that died in the night, in darkness, was her child, and her seed was dead. But the mother of the living child wanted to spare the son, wanted to make sure that the son continued to live. This is representative of a believer and unbeliever. A believer wants to tell others about Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and the living Word of God, and give that gift, the opportunity to receive that gift through sowing the seed, the Word of God, the truth of the gospel. Whereas the one who had the dead child, the dead seed, said, "Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided." She wanted to wrongly divide the son. And that's what these false prophets do. They wrongly divide the son. They wrongly divide Jesus Christ and His good news. And therefore, it leads to this type of attitude. The son is neither theirs, and it can't be anybody else's, because they teach a false gospel. It's neither mine nor thine. They go out proselytizing and make those proselytes twice the child of hell than themselves. They keep people out of the kingdom of God because they don't go in themselves. It's the same thing here. The sword discerned that person's heart, just like the sword, the Word of God, does to a person who reads it.